Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. And I am here once again with lecture 14 of drama 2, that is modern drama. Well, today's talk is going to be a conclusive talk on Juno and the Peacock that we have discussed in our previous lectures. And it is not only going to be a conclusive talk on the drama by Sean O'Casey, it will also give you a flavor of the new drama that we are going to read by Samuel Beckett, that is Waiting for Godot. One very interesting play indeed. So what we will do in today's talk, the synopsis tells that we will have a conclusive discussion on O'Casey's play. We will start with Samuel Beckett as we will start with his biography. We will have an overview of the drama, Waiting for Godot. We will see how many characters are in the play, what is the setting of the play, and what is this theatrical concept and style that this writer, Samuel Beckett, brings in. So it's going to be a kind of orientation to Samuel Beckett writings and plays, and a kind of intro to the drama that is going to be the third text of our course so far, Waiting for Godot. Okay, let us start and see what did we study regarding Sean O'Casey's play, Juno and the Peacock. In lecture 9, we started with this play, and we had an introductory talk where we had an overview of the play, which includes play's background, settings, plot, characters. We also discussed writer's life and work, because we know that affects the understanding of the play a lot. We understood the play and its social significance. In lecture 10, we continued with the plot overview. We discussed what genre is that, what is the general vision about the drama, what is the cultural context the drama is written in, and the play is reflection of social and personal influences. If it is, how it is. The play's title versus context, where reference and relevance is of great importance. We discussed the different social issues being discussed in the play, the themes of poverty, religion, reality, and fantasy, a conflict between both ideas. We moved on with it in lecture 11, where we discussed the play as a tragic comedy, and why characteristics of the genre, mood shifts and transitions take place, and what kind of effect they create. We also discussed play as a feministic representation of the writer, and what was the background of it, what makes O'Casey takes this stand, this position in favor of women, his masculine and feminine representation in the play, where we discussed masculine and feminine characters. Then in lecture 12, we studied O'Casey's work as a representation of contemporary influences, where the themes of nothingness, hollowness, and purposelessness are discussed in detail, and what relation they have with Irish Civil War that results in jingoism and disintegrated society, individuals, crushed economy, disintegrated family units and structure, and demolished psychology of individuals and generations rather, and also generation gap that it causes. So then we talked about the deterioration of relationships, poverty, religion, and escapism. How do they add into this disintegration of relationships? We also discussed women in O'Casey's work, where we mainly discussed both female characters of Juno and Mary, and we saw how O'Casey portrays his characters, female representations, and what is his techniques of enhancing the understanding of audience about female representation in the play. Then we saw how to analyze and design a composition based on character sketch, and we learned a few techniques. And we also discussed the linguistic aspect playing its role in the play by Sean O'Casey, and what kind of impact it creates on the drama on the whole. Okay, so today, starting with our new writer, new playwright, Samuel Beckett, who is known as a real absurdist writer, and Waiting for Godot is his masterpiece. So let's start with writer's biography, because this makes us understand and the different techniques the writer brings in his work, the different aspects that make one writer's work unique and different from other. Knowing writer's biography really help us in understanding the differences. So a word about Samuel Beckett's life. There is a dispute regarding his birth, but most of them, they call it's possibly April 13, 1906, December, and he died in 1989, and that is 22nd of December. So he's an absurdist Irish playwright. What is this absurdist? Is going to be one point we will keep on discussing throughout these talks about Waiting for Godot. He is not only a playwright, he's non-novelist and poet. He studied French, Italian and English at Trinity College, Dublin from 1923 to 27, and shortly thereof took a teaching post in Paris. So he has been a teacher too. There he met James Joyce, and who was to have a massive influence on him. Beckett continued his writing career while doing some secretarial duties for Joyce. So he worked as secretary of James Joyce, the writer. Okay, in 1929, when he was busy in his duties of teaching, he published his first work, a critical essay defending Joyce's work, because he was at the same time working for James Joyce as a secretary. In 1930, he won a small literary prize with his poem Horoscope, which largely concerns René Descartes, another major influence of the time. In 1930, he returned to Trinity College as a lecturer, but left after less than 2 years and began to travel throughout Europe. So he was a traveler as well. Keep picking up these little things which will enable you to understand the character and then its influence on his writing. So he spent time in London publishing his critical study of prose there in 1931 and in 1933. In the wake of his father's death, he is another writer who, in the age of in his blooming age, basically, he had this loss of his father's death. He began 2 years of Jungian psychotherapy with Dr. Wilfred Bion, who in 1935 took him to hear Jung's third Tavistock lecture, an event which he would still recall many years later. So another influence on him. In 1932, he worked on his first novel, Dream of Fair to Middling Women, but after many rejections from publishers, he decided to chop it down into small pieces and then get it published. And that's what he did later on, and it retitled it More Pricks Than Kicks, and in 1933 it was published in this chunked out form instead of being published together. So we find him another feminist approach writer. In 1935 he worked on his novel Murphy, which still showed the heavy influence of James Joyce's writing, and then in 1936 departed for extensive travels around Germany, during which time he filled several notebooks with lists of noteworthy artwork that he had seen, and also noted his distaste for the Nazi savagery which was then taking over the country. That is the time he is coming up to in his being of a professional writer who has influence of James Joyce, and who is in the process of producing his writings. He's writing about, although he's writing about his travels at that time while he was traveling around Germany, he's also mentioning his dislike for Nazi savagery which was taking over the country. So I guess this is making sense to you, and this is enabling you understand the development process of this writer. In 1937, he returned to Ireland briefly, but after a falling out with his mother, he's bearing a loss of his falling out with his mother too. He decided to settle permanently in Paris now. In December, when refusing the solicitations of a pimp, he was stabbed and he was almost murdered. And while recovering, he met the women who would be his lifelong companion, Susanna. So in a secret civil ceremony in England, they got married. It had to be a secret ceremony due to the reasons relating to French inheritance law. And in 1938, finally, he published Murphy, and the next year translated it into French. He remained in France at the outbreak of World War II. So now, at the age of 38, in 1938, he is witnessing World War II. And following the 1940 occupation by Germany, Beckett joined the French resistance working as a courier. During the next 2 years, on several occasions, he was almost caught by the Gestapo, but in August of 1942, his unit was betrayed by a former Catholic priest, and he and Susanne fled south on foot on the safety of the small village of Roslyn. Beckett is most famous for the play Waiting for Godot. This is one of his best works. Published in 1952 and English translation published in 1955, which opened to mainly bad reviews in the beginning. He had to face so much resistance, but slowly became very popular and is still often performed now. Like most of his works, after 1947, the play was first written in French under the title An Attendant Godot. Beckett is thus considered one of the great French absurdist playwrights of the 20th century, along with Ionesco and Jane Jennett. He translated his works into the English language himself. So it's not any other writer who has translated his work from French to English. He is the one who did it himself. So he's able to keep up the essence of the play. Beckett's theatre is stark, fundamentally minimalist, and deeply pessimistic about human nature and the human situation. Go back into the discussion that we had about the influences of the world and wars on these writers' writings. So whatsoever we have read so far in modern drama, we see that all of these writers are somehow realistic, pessimistic to some extent, and they will reflect chaos of the society. Beckett was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1969. Beckett died December 22nd, 1989. All right. So now, when we had a word about the writer, let's start and see what the play has to offer us for our understanding of the modern drama. Waiting for Godot. This word Godot is probably would be a new word for you. It comes from God, an abstract name taken out of God. It is Godot. Though we have T in the end, but it is silent, we do not pronounce it, so it's Godot that we pronounce. It's like somebody is waiting for God. But I'm leaving this interpretation to you and may get back to this question in the end. What do you understand by it? Waiting for Godot qualifies as one of Samuel Beckett's most famous works. Originally written in French in 1948, Beckett personally translated the play into English. That is one thing that we discussed in his biography. The world premiere was held on January 5, 1953 in the Left Bank Theatre of Babylon in Paris, when this drama was screened first. The play's reputation spread slowly through word of mouth, and it soon became quite famous. Though in the very beginning it did face a lot of resistance from the audience, because it was when you read this play, the very first reading will give you a very bitter taste in your mouth. What kind of play is this? How absurd, how abstract, and there's no story, there aren't any characters, there isn't any movement, there isn't any voice, in fact, there aren't any dialogues. However, when you keep on getting into it, when you keep on thinking and reading on to this play, you will get to know, although there is a lot of silence, but this silence is full of noise. Although there is a lot of vacuum, but this vacuum is full of dialogues unsaid but heard. The play's reputation spread slowly through the word of mouth, and it soon became quite famous. Other productions around the world rapidly followed. So this became one of the leading play of its own time, and then the times after that. The play this stands as a drama, as a drama of absurdity, basically. When you would like to give the best example of absurdist theatre, Godot, Waiting for Godot is one name that will come to your mind. The play initially failed in the United States, likely as a result of being misfilled as the laugh of four continents. However, subsequent production in New York City was more carefully advertised and garnered some success. Okay, Waiting for Godot incorporates many of the themes and ideas that Beckett had previously discussed in his other writings. So for Beckett's writing, Waiting for Godot was not entirely a new thing that he produced. However, when it reaches the masses, it was a kind of reality bomb to them. The use of the play format allowed Beckett to dramatize his ideas more forcefully than before, which is one of the reasons that the play is so intense. Okay. Beckett often focused on the idea of suffering of human being. Most of the play deals with the fact that Estragon and Vladimir, these are two characters in the play, Estragon and Vladimir, are waiting for something to elevate their boredom. Godot can be understood as one of the many things in life that people wait for. So, let's see what else we have. The play has often been viewed as fundamentally existentialist in its take on life. Now, what is existentialism? That is the second thing we will discuss in detail in this play's talk. The fact that none of the characters retain a clear mental history means that they are constantly struggling to prove their existence. We will see if you are able to understand this. Thus, the boy who consistently fails to remember either of the two protagonists casts doubt on their very existence. This is why Vladimir demands to know that the boy will in fact remember them the next day. Okay, Waiting for Godot is part of the theatre of the absurd. What is theatre of the absurd is a third question we need to answer. This implies that it is meant to be irrational. So irrationality, rationality in contrast to irrationality is focus of attention here. Rational is the play. And what makes it irrational? And why irrational altogether? Absurd theatre does away with the concepts of drama, chronological plot, logical language, themes, and recognizable settings. Absurd theatre does away. It basically rejects these ideas of having a concept-oriented drama, a chronological plot, a kind of development, a sequence development, logics and language and themes and recognizable setting. All this goes against absurd theatre. So when things are not there, this is absurd theatre. We will discuss this in more detail, of course. There's also a split between the intellect and the body within the work. Thus, Vladimir represents the intellect and Estragon, the body, both of whom cannot exist without the other. So, two aspects which are shown as individuals are also shown in intense connection with each other, where one cannot survive without the other. Okay, so a word about the characters. I am giving you the flavor of the drama, so you start your reading, and when I see you the next time, when I would start discussing things in detail, I would want you to be done with your first reading of the play, so you are able to make some sense of talk between you and me. Now, who are these characters? Vladimir and Estragon are basically the characters. Almost there are 4 to 5 characters we would find, though if we count them in figures there are 6 including Godo, but that is debatable whether we have to take Godo as a character or not. Well, Vladimir and Estragon are 2 characters. When Beckett started writing, he did not have a visual image of Vladimir and Estragon. They are never referred to as tramps in the text. Beckett said, the only thing I'm sure of is that they are wearing bowlers, these caps, particular caps. That is the only identity we get from the writer of the drama. That is only visual imagery that he provides us to understand these characters. Whatsoever comes after that, basically it's interpretation. It's not given in black and white. There are no physical descriptions of either of the 2 characters. However, the text indicates that Vladimir is likely the heavier of the pair, that Vladimir has weight more than Estragon, and Estragon is kind of a thin person. The bowlers and other broadly comic aspects of their personas have reminded modern audiences of Laurel and Hardy. You must have seen Laurel and Hardy picture or Laurel and Hardy cartoons, who occasionally played tramps in their films. So now these 2 characters are kind of you can call entertaining character, kind of jokers playing on the screen. And if we go and see it in English drama, English literature, we do have Laurel and Hardy to associate them with. And if we come into our Urdu background and Urdu history, we do have these 2 characters who are playing. One was Nana and other was Larry. And you know, the same has now replicated as these 2 young characters. I'm not good at remembering the names of these characters. However, now you are understanding what kind of characters they are. Since Beckett does not provide any kind of visual identification of the characters, the only visual characterization that is that we have in black and white is the kind of the caps that they are wearing, the caps that normally jokers wear. Okay. Now, a word about these characters individually. Vladimir stands through most of the play, whereas Estragon sits down numerous times and even dozes off. So we find Estragon sleeping and snoozing and, you know, sitting around. Estragon is preoccupied with mundane things, what he can get to eat and how to ease his physical aches and pains. He is direct, intuitive. He finds it's hard to remember but can recall certain things when prompted. That is Estragon's character. They have been together for 50 years, but when asked by Pozzo, they don't reveal their actual ages. They do not tell their ages. Pozzo is the 3rd character being introduced here. Vladimir's life is not without its discomforts too, but he is the more resilient of the pair. Throughout the play, the couple refer to each other by pet names Didi and Gogo. Okay. So we got to know Vladimir, we got to know Estragon. They have their nicknames as Didi and Gogo. Now we are getting to know that Pozzo is another character. So there are 2 more characters, Pozzo and Lucky. We learn very little about Pozo besides the fact that he is on his way to the fair to sell his slave, Lucky. So Pozo and Lucky, they do have a relationship of master and slave. Who are these characters? Where are they coming from? Where are they going? We'll get to know when we are discussing the drama in detail. He presents himself very much as the ascendancy landlord, bullying and conceited. He confesses to a poor memory, but it is more a result of an aiding self-absorption. Pozo is a character who has to overcompensate. That's why he overdoes things. Overcompensation has to do with a deep insecurity in him. Pozo controls Lucky. We know Lucky is slave and Pozo is the master. Pozo controls Lucky by means of an extremely long rope which he jerks and tugs if Lucky is the least bit slow. Okay. So you can see two representation of these characters on the screen. However, how fair they are, how true they are, you are to decide, since writer does not provide us any characterization in the play for their physical identification. Lucky is the absolutely subservient slave of Pozo, and he unquestioningly does his every bidding with dog-like devotion. Lucky speaks only once in the play, and it is a result of Pozo's order to think for Estragon and Vladimir. Lucky has only one articulation in the play. Pozo and Lucky had been together for 60 years, 10 years more than Estragon and Vladimir, and in that time their relationship has deteriorated. Lucky has always been the intellectually superior, but now with age he has become an object of contempt. His think is a caricature of intellectual thought, and his dance is a sorry sight. So the thinking process, the dancing activity are basically symbols used in the play. Despite his horrid treatment at Pozo's hand, however, Lucky remains completely faithful to him. Even in the second act, when Pozo has inexplicably gone blind and needs to be led by Lucky rather than driving him as he had done before, Lucky remains faithful and has not tried to run away, knowing that his master has gone blind, and he has been experiencing his contempt and his hatred. They are clearly bound together by more than a piece of rope. What relations do they have? What is behind this relation? We will understand in our following lectures. Then this boy is the fifth character, or the boys, whether there was one boy or there were two boys, we will see. The boy in Act 1, a local lad, assures Vladimir that this is the first time he has seen him. He says he was not there the previous day. Both of the days we see that a boy is there. We don't know whether it's one boy or there are two boys. We'll get to debate this again, but towards the end of the lecture's talk. He confirms he works for Mr. Godo as a goat herd. His brother, whom Godo beats, is a shepherd. Godo feeds both of them and allows them to sleep in his hayloft. Okay. So we see that these boys, they keep some relation with the character Godo. The boy in Act 2 also assures Vladimir that it was not he who called upon them the day before, and he entirely meeting them for the very first time in his life. He insists that this too is his first visit. When Vladimir asks what Godo does, the boy tells him he does nothing, sir. We also learn he has a white beard. Possibly the boy is not certain. Uncertainty. This boy also has a brother who it seems is sick, but there is no clear evidence to suggest that his brother is the boy that came in Act 1 or the one who came the day before than that. Uncertainty, loss of memory, lack of memory. The identity of Godot has been the subject of much debate, and we will debate on this as well. Now, a word about the settings of the play. How are setting illogical, if not logical? There is only one scene throughout both acts. There are only two acts, there is only one scene. Two men are waiting on a country road by a tree. That is the only scene setting that we have. It's a road, they are waiting by the road, and there is a tree. The script calls for Estragon to sit on a low mound, but in practice, as in Beckett's own 1975 German production, this is usually a stone. Okay, in the first act, the tree is bare. In the second, a few leaves have appeared despite the script specifying that it is the next day. We find that in the first act, the tree is bare. However, the second day, in the second act, the tree, it has a few leaves. The minimal description calls to mind the idea of the Leeuweg, a location which should not be particularized. So this discussion makes us understand that Beckett's theater is stark theater. What does this stark theater means? Basically, this word literally means unpleasantly or sharply clear images. It's like impossible to avoid a kind of scenario. He brings out the situation in such a way, without including so many characters, without including so many details in the settings and in the background, without having heavy dialogues, articulation, with keeping things minimum. He is able to bring out maximum from the play, and that is the art that Samuel Beckett presents in this drama, and that is his work is known as best of theater of absurd work. We know his theater as stark. He is not letting any detail go by without using any devices that he could use. And then he's also known as a fundamentally minimalist for his work, and this minimalist work literally means a person who does not advocate the bigs of society, the heights of society, or the major concerns of politics primarily. He talks about he advocates minor or moderate reforms in politics. Making it altogether a different kind of case here, we see that drama before the modern era talked about the heights of society, the bigs of society, the elite class of society all the time, heroes from the elite class and sublime themes from the kings and queens families and the sons and daughters of God and goddesses. However, the writers of modern era, they are writers of the age of self-consciousness. They talk about a common man, a man who is you and who is everyone, who suffers from because of society, and society, the changes in society, no matter what kind of changes they are, they affect human life in real, and in the effect the life gets changed. That is the idea presented by all of these writers. And in the background of World War I and World War II and the Irish Civil War, the situation has become more intense, and that intensity of the situation is shown very clearly in stark theater created by Beckett, and that is why he is known as existentialist and absurdist writer. So we know him as fundamentally minimalist, who is deeply pessimistic. He talks about the nose of life, he talks about the sufferings of life, he talks about the pains of life. So he will not take you in any world of fantasy, in any world of idealism, in world of beauty, in world of pleasure. He will take you in the world where you really live in, to make you feel that that is how life is. At one point, he makes you have your catharsis by giving you an outlet, by making you by assuring you that this is how it is with everyone. And on the other hand, you may find quite melancholy when what you see is all what you see for yourself all the time. So you will find, okay, there is no hope, there is no light, there is no beauty, there is no happiness. So you become more pessimistic. So we have both schools of thought for this. He explores his themes in increasingly cryptic and attenuated style. So Waiting for Godot, this discussion brings us to understand finally is part of the theater of the absurd. What is theater of the absurd? This implies that it is meant to be irrational, not rational, not logical, not anything that would make sense and make sense very easily. Absurd theater is basically anything that goes against the traditional concepts of drama, where a plot is not chronological. There isn't any kind of fair development in the plot or sequenced development in the plot that can be calculated. There is no logical ideas being discussed. There's irrationality of life, illogical experiences being depicted. Language is one phenomenon that you will find missing. Things are unsaid, but things are then depicted. Because in everyday life, we do not depict everything by the use of language. Things are presented by many other mediums and channels. So themes are very much of the same kind, and the setting is quite recognizable, everyday setting. Wherever you are standing, wherever you are sitting is not always homely settings. They're not always a kind of perfect setting. It can be as imperfect as a human life is. So themes, what you will find in Beckett's plays almost, and this play particularly, they are mirroring on search for freedom. You will find humanity searching for freedom and revolving around young man's effort to cut himself loose from his family and responsibility and social obligations. You want to get rid of them. And life means waiting. All the time you're waiting for something. If one problem gets solved, there's another problem coming onto the top of the list, and when it goes away and it gets solved, another problem takes its place. So it's continuous effort, continuous waiting, continuous looking forward to hope and happiness, and you are never in a perfect state of happiness. Killing time, many things that you are doing basically to kill the time, to let this go, to just passing the time, rather living it, and clinging to the hope that relief may be just around the corner, and that corner never comes up in the perfect sense, because you are revolving again and again around the similar kind of situations, if not the same. Trades in plot, characterization, and final solution, which had hitherto been the hallmarks of drama, for a series of concrete stage images. So the third aspect of the drama is the language, the uselessness of irrationality of language, or the pauses in itself. You will find the silence, the pause is too meaningful, because when we are not saying anything, the moments when we are not saying anything are basically the moments when we are saying a lot, and that is depicted beautifully by the writer. For he creates a mythical universe peopled by lonely creatures who struggle vainly to express the unexpressible. And this struggle to do that is basically the key of the whole thing, the whole debate going on. Characters exist in a terrible dream-like vacuum, bewilderment and grief, attempting some form of communication, then crawling on endlessly. Okay, so there is only one scene throughout both acts, only one scene, 2 acts. 2 men are waiting on a country road by a tree. This is a total scenario. The script calls for Estragon to sit on a low mount, but in practice, as in Beckett's own 1975 German production, this is usually a stone. So this is total movement in the play. Whatsoever happens is little far or less than this. They move forward, they go back, but they're all the time then and there. You will find them not moving a lot on the stage. There's not a lot of movement going out and going in. So what is happening basically in the same place, in the same kind of setting, by the same characters. There are 2 main characters, Vladimir and Estragon, and there's another pair, Pozo and Lucky, who share the relationship of master and slave. And then there is presence of boy or boys, that is a debatable aspect. And then there is the presence of Godot, who never appears on the stage. So I think I have ignited your curiosity to read the play and read the play in detail and see what you can get out of it, because when you meet me next, you should be all ready to understand the discussion by reading at least for once the play. Okay.
It is established what many deny, that man in posse, a test you encountered, that man in essay, that man in short, that man in brief, in spite of the strides of alimentation and defecation, waste and pines, what is more, in spite of the strides of physical culture, the practice of sports such as tennis, football, running, cycling, swimming, flying, floating, riding, gliding, canoeing, camogie, skating, tennis of all kinds, diving, flying, sports of all sorts, autumn, summer, winter, tennis of all kinds, hockey of all sorts, penicillin and succedaneous. In a word, I resume flying, gliding, golf over 9 and 18 holes, tennis of all sorts. In a word, for reasons unknown, in Peckham, Fulham, Clapham, namely, concurrently, simultaneously, what is more, for reasons unknown, but time will tell, fades away. I resume Fulham, Clapham. In a word, the dead lost per head since the death of Bishop Burple, being to the tune of 1 inch 4 ounce per head, approximately, by and large, more or less, to the nearest decimal, good measure, round figures, stark naked in the stocking feet in Connemara. In a word, for reasons unknown, no matter what matter, the facts are there, and consider it, what is more, much more grave, that in the life of the labours lost of Steinweg and Peterman, it appears what is more, much more grave, that in the light of the labours lost of Steinweg and Peterman, that in the plains, in the mountains, by the seas, by the rivers, running water, running fire, the air is the same as in the earth. Namely the air, and then the earth, in the great cold, the great dark, on sea, on land, in the air. I resume in the year there, Lord, 600 and something, the air, the earth, the sea, the earth, abode of stones in the great deeps, the great cold, on sea, on land, and in the air. I resume, for reasons unknown, in spite of the tennis, the facts are there, but time will tell. I resume, alas, on, in short, in fine, on, abode of stones, who can doubt it? I resume, but not so fast, I resume, the skull fading, and concurred simultaneously, what is more, for reasons unknown, in spite of the tennis, on, the beard, the flames, the tears, the stones, so blue, so calm, alas, the skull in Connemara, in spite of the tennis, the labours abandoned and unfinished, greater still, abode of stones, in a word, I resume, alas, abandoned, unfinished, the skull in Connemara, in spite of the tennis, the skull, alas, the stones, tennis, the stones, so calm, unfinished.
Help me. Wait. He has it. Well,
Why doesn't he put down his bags?
rubbish! Are you sure? Damn it, haven't you already told us? Already told you?
He's already told us. Why does he put down his bags?
How should I know?
Say something to him.
Look.
What?
Here.
See nothing.
His neck.
Oh, I say!
A running sword.
It's the rope.
It's the rubber.
It's another
It's
one.
the knot.
It's the jacket. I knew it was him. Get out.
But it's not Godot.
It's not Godot.
It's not Godot.
Who is it?
It's Puxel. Here, help me up. We can't get up.
Let's go.
We can't.
Why not?
I'm waiting for Godot.
Ah!
Perhaps he has another bone for Chicken. Do not remember?
Him?
Yes.
Ask him.
Perhaps we should help him first.
Do what?
To get up.
Can't get up.
He wants to get up.
Let him get up.
He can't.
Why not?
I don't know. Oh. And it came on you all of a sudden. Quite wonderful. I'm asking if it came on you all of a sudden. I woke up one fine day, as blind as fortune. Sometimes I wonder if I'm not still asleep. And when was that? I don't know, but no later than yes. Don't question me! The blind have no notion of time. The things of time are hidden to them as well. I didn't see that. I could have sworn it was just the opposite.
I'm going.
Where are we? Couldn't tell you. It isn't by any chance the place known as the Board? Never heard of it. Well, what's it like? It's indescribable. There's nothing. It's like nothing. There's a train. We have time to roll. The air is full of our cries. But habit is a great bender. Someone is saying, he is sleeping. He knows nothing. He will sleep on.
Then adieu.
Adieu?
Adieu.
Adieu.
What we had in today's lecture was a conclusive talk on Sean O'Case's work, Juno and the Peacock, and we discussed how many stages we covered in order to understand the play, and we started with our orientation of the drama Waiting for Godot by Samuel Barclay Beckett, and Samuel Beckett's biography we started with to understand what is the general overview of the drama, how many characters are there, what kind of characters are there, what kind of setting is there, what kind of theoretical concept and writing style the writer adopts, and what kind of situation and impact it creates. And hopefully the coming lecture will make you understand different things, which would include a collective kind of a precise version of the plot summary. We will summarize and we will see what kind of plot development we have in the play. We will have this summary along with the analysis. I will like you, because once you meet me next time, you'll be done with your first reading, so you will be able to analyze what things happened and why did they happen. And we will do these two plays where introduction of Pozzo and Lucky's entrance, and we will do Act 2, introduction of Pozzo and Lucky's entrance again. We will touch upon some few discussion questions which are usually debatable aspects regarding drama, and we will touch upon the aspects to be analyzed critically by you, so to understand and interpret your reading in detail. So we'll see you next time, inshallah, come having read the play Waiting for Godot by Samuel Beckett. By then, Allah Hafiz.